Welcome to Turn Talks, the podcast that bridges the gaps between college and career. Join your host, Tina Fox, founder of Turn Mentoring, as she brings together corporate leaders, educators, and university alumni to share practical wisdom and equip you with confidence, clarity, and connection.
Hi, everyone. It's Tina Fox, the founder and CEO of Turn Mentoring, and this is Turn Talks. Thanks so much for joining us today. I have an exciting person on my show today, a friend, entrepreneur, fantastic mentor, business person, all-around inspiration to me. His name is Mark Watson with Exterior Medics. I just know him as Mark, and I met Mark about 10 years ago? Was that when we met?
Yeah, at least 10 years ago now. Yeah, if not a little bit more.
10 years ago, we met through networking. And, when you meet a lot of people in a networking room, I know that sometimes networking can be very daunting because it's fast paced and people are always on their A game. And so there's a lot of handshaking and cards being thrown around. But every now and again, you get some real gold in them minds. And my gold was certainly Mark Watson. And so I've asked Mark to come on the podcast today because Mark's story, Mark's background, why he's an inspiration to me. I just kind of wanted to bring that all out today to share with you all because I know that if there's gold for me, there's going to be gold for others. And so I'm really excited to have this opportunity to chat with you today, Mark. So thank you for coming on with me today.
But you're amazing. No, I'm happy to be here. Good to be talking. It's been a long time coming, is getting on camera like this. We've had many a conversation over coffee and networking, as you mentioned, and lunches and things like that. So happy to connect with you again and connect with the audience.
Awesome. So let's kick off with how we met because I'm trying to think of like the moment and my brain is not as functioning as it used to be. And so I'm like, okay, I know I met him at a networking meeting, but there were a lot of people. Do you remember anything about like the early days of us meeting?
Oh, gosh. Other than me being at least one of the most, if not the most uncomfortable person in the room, I think at the time. No, I know it was at a BNI event over there in McLean. As far as the actual intimate details of the matter, no. I remember you being always so well put together in so many ways. And again, I'm just this stumbling, bumbling fool, just trying to make it, just trying to fit in.
See, that's something about Mark. You have this self-deprecation and this level of humility that always keeps you grounded, but is absolutely not necessary because I watched Mark grow his business and I was really fascinated because he's growing a business. Oh, so here's something really interesting. Exterior Medics, for those who don't know, is a trade business. So Mark, can you give us a little bit of background about Exterior? Give us your 30-second pitch on Exterior
Oh my
Medics. You haven't
gosh, I
done
haven't
that in
done
a
one of
long
those
time.
in a while. My 30-second pitch. No, but Exterior Medics is a specialty home improvement contractor. We specialize and focus on the exterior facade, the building envelope of the property. And we do work in both residential construction, so where people live, as well as condominium complexes, which typically is where people live also. But that gets a little bit more into the commercial realm of things, larger scale projects, the same things that we're doing on residential homes, roofing, siding, gutters, windows, doors, that sort of thing, but just on larger buildings. So at a greater scale.
And let's talk about how you got into this business, which, by the way, that was a great 30 seconds. I would not have dinged the buzzer on you. But I also remember you used to always say, Exterior Medics, we do house calls.
We make house calls. That's right. We're like a
Yes.
doctor for your home.
It's like a jingle that I will never lose in my head. So Exterior Medics was this small business that you and your partner Joe grew. But how did you all decide that you were going to build a company in exteriors?
Yeah, so Joe and I worked together actually for two different companies prior to starting Exterior Medics. So when we started working together, we were working in the insurance restoration field. So we were doing a lot of work directly with homeowners still, but working with insurance companies, negotiating claims for things like hail damage and wind damage and things like that. So if a large loss came about in the area, we would work with local homeowners to make their home whole again. And we pivoted from that because we didn't want to chase storms for a living. We didn't want to move around. We wanted to have our roots grounded somewhere. We were both building establishing our families. And so it needed to be something that was a little bit more grounded in that way. So we started working for a local roofing company, great company in the Northern Virginia area, and we were selling. So we were selling home improvements, and again, a great company, and they were really focused on what they did. But as we were working with them, there were certain trades that they didn't touch. They, for example, they didn't touch masonry, and so Joe and I would oftentimes we would go out and we would diagnose problems for homeowners, and we would find that not only the roof that they were calling us out for, but they also had chimney masonry problems or other things like that. And so we'd refer companies out, and sometimes the companies that we referred out were good, and sometimes they weren't so good. And we found ourselves being really reliant on the skill sets and the specialty of others. And we decided that we wanted to take matters into our own hands and be in control of that a little bit more for ourselves and offer holistic solutions for our homeowners. So that's where the name Exterior Medics was born. It was it. We weren't just roofers, we weren't just siding guys or masonry. We were a complete building envelope, and we consider ourselves to be like a doctor for the house. So we sort of really appreciated the building science aspect of construction, and that led us to form the basis of what Exterior Medics was to become, to where we wanted to make sure that when we met you, we could leave you better than we found you, and we didn't have to leave you in somebody else's hands in order to fulfill that promise.
And that I love what you just said about when we met you, we wanted you to know that by the time that we left you, it was going to be better.
Yes.
That should be the premise that every business starts with, right? So you guys, you worked in a job, you saw issues with your clients, you decided that you were going to try to solve their issues, and then the more you were solving issues but being reliant upon others, you decided, well, we can do this and we can control the quality and we can start doing this ourselves. But can we back up a click?
Sure.
Because what I find so interesting, two things. One, I know about you. The other one, I'm wondering, because I don't know if we've ever actually talked about this. So I know that you graduated from high school and you decided
Mhm.
that you were going to go to college, but
Correct.
you didn't end with a college degree. That was not going to be your path. So can you take us back to that? And then my second question had to ask you about, like, how did you learn how to sell? Because you just said that like it
Mhm.
was a matter of, and everybody can do this. And we just went out and sold. And everybody's like, that's not as easy as it seems, especially when you're young.
So to take it back as far as my path, a little, unorthodox, I guess, in the constraints of sort of what everybody tells us that we need to do, right? As far as you go to high school and then you graduate high school, you go to college, and I certainly have no knocks about that. That's a great path for a lot of people. But for myself, so I moved to the Northern Virginia area when I was 19 years old, and I enrolled in community college. I was going to Nova here in the local area and doing just fine with it, but not really feeling passionate, not really feeling like I had a path that or knew what my path might be. And so I answered an ad. It was at the Washington Post at the time, when newspaper ads were still the way that old guys like me answered opportunities. And that opportunity just read very simply. It was like, our top guy made some exorbitant amount of money. If you think you can handle that type of cash, call here. And so I answered this ad not knowing what the job was for, but I was just like, why not? I went for that opportunity, went for the interview, got offered the job, and it was in the insurance restoration business. And what I didn't know at the time was it was full commission. We paid for everything. We set ourselves up as 1099s. You had to have your own vehicle. You paid for your own church. You got your own phone. Everything was on you. But you worked for this organization and you went out and sold. You knocked, and it was by selling. I said it was knocking doors, which I believe is probably the toughest way to sell. I was knocking on strangers' homes, telling them that they had storm damage that they didn't know that they had, convincing them that I should get up on their roof and check for this storm damage. And then after doing so, if they did have storm damage, convincing them that they needed to call their insurance company, but also that when they call their insurance company and come out, that I should be the person to represent them. This 19-year-old punk kid, stranger. I mean, I looked nothing like what you would expect as far as, a construction professional. I was driving a Chevy Econoline van, brown van, champagne stripes
Yeah,
on the
you were.
side. It was champagne stripes. I kid you not, Tina. And my ladder, I didn't have a ladder rack on this van. My ladder was a red aluminum tipped ladder, an extension ladder that I slid through the back of the van, I popped the seats, the back seat. It was awesome. It would pop down into a bench or into a bed, and had that pop down so my ladder could fit in. And I rode down the street with my arm on one ladder, the hand on the steering wheel of the other. And so when folks said, "Okay, yeah," I'd get on the roof, and they would look at my van, or, "Do you need a ladder?" I'm like, "No, I got it." And I'd pop those back doors open. I'd slide it open. So I think to answer your question, how did I learn how to sell? Like you learn a lot of great lessons in life by a lot of failure. Doors slammed in my face, going, okay, you know what? Is it something I said? Maybe I won't say that again. Or is it them? Sometimes it's just, it's not a reflection, as you've taught me so many times. Rejection is not a reflection necessarily of you all the time or your ideas, right? That's a lesson that you taught me a long time ago. And so I just, and I had beyond anything else, I just had a belief and a determination that I could do this, and just I think a grit that wouldn't allow me to, for those failures, for those rejections to be something that I was going to take, and not allow it to make me better.
So first of all, there's a song by a group that says 100 bad stories is what is it? It's 100 bad days means 100 bad stories, and 100 bad stories makes you interesting at parties. And so here we are. We're not, maybe not at a party, but we're interesting on a
No.
podcast because I didn't even know about the Econoline van. I did not
Oh,
know
man.
that. I knew that you were 100% commission. I knew you were knocking on doors. I knew it was a hard way. And so much to unpack there. So I just got to pause because I think some of the things that I'm hearing today, the angst of the younger generation that is going out in the workforce, particularly with AI, that
Mhm.
is now out there, is that they feel as though this lower rung of the entry level is being lost to what AI could do in place of them, right? For
Right.
cheaper and all of that. And so to hear your story of basically School of Hard Knocks as to, how you ended up learning sales. And I loved how you said, well, sometimes I was like, maybe I shouldn't say that. And sometimes maybe it's just them. I guess let's talk about like what that felt like the level of resiliency that you needed to have in order to get up again. You're not making a paycheck unless you close a deal. So I
Right.
guess the
Very
question
much.
the audience is going to have is like, well, how'd you feed yourself? Right? If you're not making any money yet and you're 100% commission and you gotta drive your van, you gotta put gas in the van. Right now, gas is $4 a gallon. So people are
Right.
thinking that's expensive and you're getting doors slammed in your face. How did you feed yourself and how did you pick yourself back up every day to go back out and do it again?
Gosh, yeah, I scraped. I scraped a lot as far as how could I feed myself, and quite literally how I fed myself. I remember when I was driving this van, and like you said, because if you didn't sell, if you didn't get I could do some draws early on, right? So I could draw against future commissions. But that's only after you get a couple of sales under your belt, so that the company knows that they've got a little bit of collateral if they need it. So I had it, but it was very sparse as far as the income that I had. But I remember one of my territories was in Warrenton, Virginia, and it was out in Warrenton's a little bit more built up than it was then. So I drive 45 minutes out to my territory in my van, and I literally had a big Ziploc bag filled with change, like change that I had saved over the years and sort of put in there. And I kid you not, there was a gas station that I used to stop to in Warrenton, and I would fill up whatever I could with gas. And they had this turnstile on the corner at the cash register, and it was dollar pizza, dollar slices. And that's what I used to eat. I used to go in there oftentimes, not condoning this, I'm not suggesting that from a healthy living standpoint that you should eat dollar style pizza from the gas station, but that's what I had. That's what I had. So I'd eat this dollar slice of pizza, and I would just scrape by. And there's some days where you'd eat a slice of pizza and that was it. Other days when you had some sales, and you'd have a little bit more to go off of. And of course, I had folks around me to support. I don't want to sort of. It wasn't all sort of doom and gloom. My parents were very supportive. I don't come from a lot of money. We always had enough. I always had so I wasn't sort of on the streets or anything like that. So my parents were supportive to a certain extent, as much as they should have been. But no, I was at that point when I dropped out of school. I was on my own from that standpoint. It was a decision that I made. It wasn't one that my parents necessarily understood why I was doing it, but I had enough conviction around that this is what I needed to do. And at that point, all they could do is support me, even if it was begrudgingly at first.
So you go out there, you're eating your dollar pizza. You do have the love and support of parents who
Yeah.
can't do any more means, but you're
Hmm.
taking accountability for yourself at 19,
Yeah.
which 19, doesn't seem like that old when you're like, I just got to figure this out.
Right.
And you're out there and you're getting doors slammed in your face.
Hmm.
So what makes you decide that you're going to go do this again?
Yeah, again, it was a belief, it was a conviction in that what I was doing was the right path for me. It was whenever I got a yes, that yes was powerful, right? It was just another notch that said, you're doing the right thing, you can do this. This is a service that people need. So there was a belief in what I was doing was for good, and it was not only for the good of others, but it was for the good of myself, that this was something that I could do, right? I really just had passion around what I was doing. I really found that I was enjoying the home improvement industry. I came from a blue collar family. Again, I never necessarily worked with my own hands for very long. I was a laborer for a short period of time on a construction site that was miserable, but it was work and it was good, honest, hard work. So I always enjoyed construction. So I enjoyed about around being in the industry. I had some coworkers that I really enjoyed being with, and again, there was this belief that I knew I could do it, and that, again, just something that was within me that told me that this was the right thing for me to be doing. I mean, doors slammed in your face is one thing. I had one time I had a guy come out of his house unexpectedly with a hammer, and quite literally chased me down his driveway. And again, maybe it was just because I was just young and dumb and just naive enough to sort of not take that as a warning sign. But I knocked on his neighbor's house and continued on, right?
You were
But it's just
probably very fast, so that's the way
yeah,
that
yeah, faster than I am now for sure.
so you do all of this. Talk to me about trades because one of the
Yeah.
things, so as you know, I've got 2 sons and a bonus son, and as I'm getting my younger 2 sons, to consider their future, I always lay out the options, right? There's lots of options. You can go to work, you can go and serve the country, you can look at community college, you can look at four-year college, because we've been saving for them to go do that if they should choose. You got to get in, of course. So today, there are lots of options in how you educate yourself, how you get experience. Would you have done anything differently? What advice would you give to your younger self as far as these options that exist? And what did you glean from your experience?
Yeah, is to the question of would I do anything different? I don't believe so, because it's easy to say at almost 46 years old now, would I do anything different? 46-year-old me, I'm sure would have done a lot of things differently. But those same things that I would have done differently maybe would have completely altered my path, right? I wouldn't have had maybe the same courage that I did. Again, courage, stupidity, you can toss it up and call it one of the two, but I wouldn't have been, I don't think I would have been bold enough to sort of chase the same way, right? I was still, again, sort of full of just, I didn't know what I didn't know, and that was to my benefit. Right, I did that fear of rejection wasn't there, and I think in some ways, had I not done it then, maybe that quickly would have been, that fear of rejection would have sort of grown, and then before you know it, you sort of you put yourself in a box, and you don't naturally find your whatever your special hidden talents are, right? Your encodings may be. So for me, I don't think I would tell myself to do anything differently. Maybe I ought to bought a different truck sooner, or figured out a way to get rid of the Econoline
Just
van.
keep
But you know
taking
what? That also, I hold that part of the story. As funny as it sounds, as I say it, and hopefully the audience gets a kick out of it. But all of those things sort of, I look at it, and they're all steps along the journey that sort of helped me get to where I am, right? And without that grit, without the failure points and it being difficult. I don't know. I really I hold on to that dearly as far as that struggle, those struggles that I had.
And who was mentoring you at the time, or did you have any mentors? Was it really
Oh
just
yeah, I had my mentors were some of my peers, my sales managers. There were different guys that were in the industry, but at that time, at least the early days, it was a lot of. I mean, I listened to a lot of tapes and CDs. Those were real things. Most of your audience maybe doesn't even know what those are,
well, if you're
but they
driving an Econoline, I'm thinking you might even have had an 8-track because my family had
yeah.
150 and it had an
I
8-track.
had a cassette track, yeah, a cassette player for sure, and I think my CD player even was one that I plugged the cassette into the cassette tape, and then it plugged in. It had an adapter to my CD player. I don't think it had a legit CD player in there, but I listened to a lot of, I'd listen to some Brian Tracy and Zig Ziglar and some of these, these sales masters that were very known at the time, maybe not as known now, which would be a shame because these are guys sort of the pioneers of the sales industry, that at least the sales industry that I grew up in. And then later on after that, once I started sort of getting more involved, I got into a lot more formal training. The first formal sales training that I started doing was once I left the first company and went on to the second one, and it was by the guy named of Dave Yoho Associates, and there had a guy named Jerry Rott was the account rep that worked with the company I was with, and I spent a lot of time with him, listening and learning, as well as their sales manager and some other managers there, but just sort of just taking in everything I could, talking to the veterans, and and beyond just talking to sales professionals. When I was selling, I talked to the crews. I'd find out what they did, how they did it, and that helped me connect more with the work. So that when I met with a client, when I met with my prospect, I could speak more intelligently to the wants and needs. So when they had a need or a want or a desire for something on a project, I could speak about it not just from a features and benefits of the product as a salesperson would, but I could speak about it as far as how it's actually going to solve their problems. Because I would take time to sit on the job sites and learn from the job foreman and ask them why they were doing things a certain way, and why this way and not that way, and sitting on the ridge line. So there's a lot of different folks that are responsible for sort of me learning and understanding better the industry I was in, and the profession that I had taken on.
I feel like, you are definitely somebody I would call authentically curious, and you are a man of the people. I see how you interact with your team at Exterior Medics. I see how you interact with customers. I see how you interact with possible referring partners.
Hmm.
You are always seeking. You are a
Yeah.
seeker of knowledge. So where do you think this seeking comes from? Is that how you prefer to learn? How does that serve you in day-to-day business? Of course, you said it gets you to be able to speak the language, it gets you closer to the customer, but talk to me about your seeking.
I believe it comes from just an understanding and a comfort with knowing that there's always more to know, and always more to learn. And so I never feel like I've got the answer, right? It's always like there's something else, there's something else. So yeah, I do have that curiosity, and just I enjoy learning from others' experiences, and sort of gleaming onto that knowledge. I've been really fortunate, present company included. But when we were part of a BNI chapter, there were folks that I would just listen. I'm like, my gosh, they're the way that they speak. How do they present themselves so confidently, and how did they learn how to do that? So then I would sort of just sit with them and talk with them, talk with you, and sort of learn about how you do these. How do you do that? How do you speak this way? How do you present yourself so confidently? That's just one example. And then in business, it wasn't about working with and meeting other people in the construction industry, though that was also important, but all walks of business. Like I'm always fascinated and enjoyed learning from others and really trying to understand people more than it is anything else, and what's behind the person, what's behind the business that they're in. So yeah, I don't know. I've just always had that fascination with the human story, and what makes people people, if that makes sense.
Well,
Uh,
that's where we have a kinship for sure. I mean, we've got a lot of things that I believe we're kindred souls in, but the knowing of people at a level that is beyond surface has been a through line in our relationship as far as how we operate in business, how we then go take coffee and talk to each other about just life in general. It's always been a
Hmm.
fascination of me to know you in that vein. And I'm going to back up for 1 second because talking about you being a seeker, and you were saying, when it came to your mentors, you had your sales managers and you had people that you were associated with, but you also talked about going in and you had books and you had things on tape. And so but you said even before that, I'm going to go back one more step. You
Hmm.
said that you don't know if you would have done anything differently when you were younger because you don't know if
Yeah.
it's because you didn't know anything or, sometimes just not knowing is a good thing. But you're right. I think as you layer in the levels of responsibility as we age, it's like the skin in the game gets a little bit deeper, right? And you're like,
Hmm.
am I gonna now what's at stake? But I find that interesting because speaking of books, speaking of being a seeker, speaking of which you ended up giving me this book,
Uh-huh.
and I was in my 40s and I was trying to decide if I was going to be an entrepreneur yet again. And but your advice to me in my 40s was like, "What are you gonna do with that idea?" And it was so for the people who don't know this book, what do you want to do with an idea? You have to get it. It's such a beautiful book, and I love the fact that Mark gives me this children's book because, first of all, the illustrations are gorgeous, but sometimes when you're drowning in considerations, for somebody like Mark, who's a mentor to me, to then say, "I'm just gonna give you something so simple to think about." So your advice to me was
Mm.
through this children's book, and I did have a lot on the line, but you're like, "No, I still want you to go for it. I still want
Yeah.
you to pursue your dream." So, I don't know. I feel like, wow, gosh, maybe I was duped by this guy because he was like, "No, no, no." I don't know. There was a lot on the line. So any thoughts on like why did you give me that book back then? What were you thinking at the time? Like I feel like
Yeah, because as we were saying, right, we connect. We enjoy connecting and truly understanding people's stories and seeing, and I think a gift that I have that you have is that you see this potential, right? You see potential in others, and you have a belief in others, and maybe a belief that sometimes they don't quite have themselves yet, or maybe it's not as strong as it could or should be. And whether that's what I saw, in the time where I recommended that book or not, I don't know. But when I picked up that book for the first time, I picked it up for my children. I have three amazing girls, and I picked it up for them, and I read it, and I remember it being just profound. The sort of feel like when I read this book, and it is like you said, it is written and meant to be for children, but I believe it's for anybody.
mm,
And again, it speaks to what I've said earlier, right? And when you asked me about the, and to the point you're making, would you do anything different? And God, I hope not, because again, as it speaks to in that book, right? You have these ideas, you have these dreams, these ambitions, these desires, and if you allow it to, the world or certain people within the world will tell you that your ideas are no good, that that you're not smart enough, you're not this. And again, a lot of times it's your own inner voice, right? I've had that struggle. You talk about imposter syndrome, right? I've struggled with it. I still have it, but I have the ability now to calm it and not allow it to sort of take force and take power over me. And so, when you're like you said, when you're 40 years old and you've got this idea, but then you've also got the weight of like, well, gosh, I was this high powered executive and I was going all over the country and I did this and I did that. And now we've got this, this little idea and oh God, who knows maybe it's no good. Maybe it's no good. And you sort of put the idea away and you sort of put it in the corner and, it just sort of sits there. And I think that at the time that we were talking and what I believe that I try to do with my own team, with my children, with folks that are outside of the organization is that if I see something, I feel like it's my opportunity to say, no, like there's something there. Like, why not? Why not doing it and sort of give that nudge, give that opportunity, to, or that belief, share that belief in somebody that say, no, you've got an idea that could be something powerful there. And I think we all need just a little bit more of that encouragement at times. There's too many things I think again in life that tell us, no, you don't. Just, stop it, stop dreaming, go on. And it sort of just really takes the love and the joy out of what we do in life. And, those opportunities that we get to, to sort of push back and say, no, go for it. I think are just, I don't know.
Well,
It's what I
I
live
gotta
for.
tell you, I'm so grateful that you and I are friends. I'm so grateful that you gave me this book because this sits in my office front and center.
Mm,
Because as an entrepreneur, there are many times where you just think, "What have I done?" Like today is basically a kick in the head.
mm,
And going back to this book and recognizing that, sometimes we take our ideas and we protect them like a little egg. And, we want to put this little egg on a shelf and we don't want anybody to hurt the little egg. We don't want our idea to be blasted. And
mm.
so we do everything to protect it, but in that protection as opposed to in this advancement of the potential, as you said, we're probably doing more harm than good. So you taught me that, and I'll forever be grateful for the fact that you did something so simple, so easy, but it is a daily reminder in my life of not only you, but what potential exists and that Mark Watson believes that there's potential in this idea. And so I gotta keep going. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
That's amazing. Thank you, Tina.
So you hire a lot of people.
Yeah.
And how big is Exterior Medics these days? How many people you guys have?
Uh, as far as headcount,
Yeah.
about 55, 56 people. Yeah, sort of in that 50 to 60 realm, depending on seasonality, but uh, not less than 50 these days, and approaching 60.
And what I love about your company is that, it's not Amazon. It's not the size of an Amazon. We don't have
Mhm.
thousands of people in an international market. But I often tell students that, you've got big companies that come to recruit on these college campuses. And the reason why they come to recruit is they have the bandwidth to do so.
Yeah.
But you have to be aware of these smaller companies that exist that are 50, 60, 100 people and, or even 5, 10 people. And I was talking to Don Magruder, right? Another
Mhm.
friend of ours who runs a beautiful CPA business. And she's always competing against bigger accounting firms for these students because she just doesn't have the bandwidth to send people from her office to sit in a career fair at various college campuses. But at the same time, she is growing and she needs to hire talent. And you guys have this amazing company. And one of the things I always loved is I love seeing your posts about how you would have these picnics and you would have these crazy games that you would play with all of
Mm.
your employees at these picnics and all the families were invited. And it's just a different sense of business. So talk to me a little bit about, the values and how you all operate as a company at Exterior Medics.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you mentioning that and acknowledging it. So I think we win on culture. That's, the not so secret sauce around here, right? Is
You
that we win
win
on
on
culture.
culture. You
We
win
win
on
on culture.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. As Peter Drucker says, right? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. It's something that for us, to your point, right? We can't compete with the Amazons and the other large corporations of the world and the folks that sort of can come in here and offer, we what I would suggest is that we offer extremely fair and compensation and healthy compensation packages. Don't get me wrong, but when you're comparing to these behemoths, there's just no way to compete on that, right? But and I would suggest that at the same token that it's hard for them to compete on our culture because it is very much a team dynamic here. We operate with integrity, right? We lead with core values, and we really sort of pour into people, and that's one of the passions that I have, and thankfully the other leaders within the organization have is really pouring into and building people. We say when we're hiring, when I'm interviewing anybody, and this is also with our other hiring managers now. We say, you help us grow, you will grow with us. That's our promise to you. And it's something that I can promise you. I said from day one, the first person that we hired, I said that to, and I meant it, and I believed it there because there's no worse feeling than believing that you're contributing to something that doesn't contribute back or doesn't give you something back. And it's not about the most money. It's not about anything else, but it's actually, so when we talk about growing with us, I mean, it's helping people sort of giving them an opportunity to when folks are able to buy their first home, right? When they start a family, and when they start a family and they want and they need a little bit more time or grace in terms of their leave, we're able to give them that, and we're able to sort of pour into them in different ways. And they want to educate themselves, they want to learn a new skill, and we can sort of offer them some assistance and to do that, right? And we have a tuition program here that we have that where we help people sort of further educate and chase not necessarily something that's directly result or impact to their job today, but it's something that they have an interest in that could sort of help them sort of grow themselves as an individual and as a person. So that's our culture here. That it's just really truly pouring into people. And it goes back to if you want to talk about with the book, something else. It's just when you see potential in people, you see the opportunity there, and when they see it, when they come here and join us under that promise that they're going to grow with us, it's like we need to do everything we can to be part of their growth, right? Part of their journey. And so that's what we have here.
This is such an important point that I need to sit on for a second because, you know, sometimes the currency isn't necessary currency. And what you just described in the currency of the culture and how you are pouring into people in the way that they're pouring back into you. I know some of your employees. I'm thinking of two in particular, Lauren, who
Hmm.
started her family, as you mentioned. She got the time
Yeah.
off. She absolutely loves working for you guys, and she has grown so much in her role. And then, of course, Steve, who now has built his dream home on a
Hmm.
mountain,
Yeah.
and he is absolutely thrilled with the trajectory of, his career path and being partnered with you guys. And so the fact that there are companies out there that I think, you know, people today should look at who are the leaders, what is the culture, what other currency is being offered other than currency? Because, statistics show that 50% of why people leave a job is because of their leadership. It's because of
Hmm.
their direct manager. And you all have always created this secret sauce. And I've watched you over a decade not only grow as far as the physical makeup in your building and your team size and, the amount of revenue you all bring in, but I have watched you all grow as a family at Exterior Medics. And that is such a rare thing. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So you hire for potential, you bring people up with you. And, I've also known you to not only be an extraordinary leader in your business, but you've got this beautiful picture of kids that are no longer that age, but you've got your three girls who are now a little bit older. And
Yeah.
that's been another through line in your life is that, you are somebody who does not sacrifice family. As a matter of fact, going back to your origin story, when you and Joe were trying to contemplate, you know what? We don't want to have to be all over the place. We want to control
Right.
quality and we want to do it here and we want to focus on family. So talk about the importance of family for you.
Oh my gosh. I'll try to do it with sort of keeping the tears because I don't have tissues close enough. And I am a sap at the end of the day. But no, Mandy, my wife, and my three girls, Kara, Evelyn, and Lila are everything. And I think keeping, they are the inspiration that I hold now, right? They are what on the tough days, sort of, when you need a little bit extra. That's they're my drive, right? They're the fire inside of me. Making sure that I'm doing everything I can, not to earn more money or have more success in that way, but to sort of just to hopefully be an example of what a leader should look like, what a father should look like, what a man should look like in their life. The fact that I have three girls, hopefully sort of give them a resemblance of what hopefully they look for as far as from a character standpoint, and so yeah, it's all of those things, but yeah, they are absolutely the big why, right? The North Star sort of that sort of guides me through any tough moment.
And last time we had coffee, it was Friday afternoon
Hmm.
and we had lunch and you were getting ready on top of your busy schedule, you're getting ready to drive 4 hours to Pittsburgh to go to a
Yeah,
tournament. So how'd Kara do?
they did well. They did well. They went 5-1 that weekend.
Oh,
They
wow.
had yeah they had a great tournament, and they beat a couple of really good teams that on paper folks were thinking no chance that they're going to beat them. All right, but that's why they play the game. So yeah, they had a great tournament. Played really well. Played their butts off. Really really tough. but yeah, no, they're doing fantastic.
It's important, I in my first career when I was in med tech, I was primarily surrounded by men. And, I think a lot of women in business have felt like they've needed to take time out of work in order to go raise the family. But what I found when I was working with all these men is that they were really struggling with back then we called it work-life balance. I don't know if we all
Mhm.
believe in a true balance. Like sometimes it's
Right.
higher here and sometimes a little bit higher here. But they were really struggling with the balance of, how do I be a good person at work and be a good employee to my company, and how do I be a good family man at the same time? And you have definitely held the line on that. And now we move forward to the fact that you and Joe have built this amazing company. You had a lot of eyeballs on you, and you had a lot
Yeah.
of people knocking on the door saying, "Hey, we like the culture that you've built. We like the trajectory of where you all are growing, and we want to talk to you about partnering with you." So,
Yeah.
if you can bridge us from the fact that you now are partnered with
Yeah.
a firm, and in that partnership, there are new requests, but at the same time, you have always kept strong on this, there are certain things that I will not erode. And one
Right.
of those things is your ability to spend time with your family who,
Yeah.
they're going to be going to college at some point. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, to speak about that, and again, speak about the non-negotiables, and I'll sort of work backward to the partnership and talk about that. But that is absolutely it's a non-negotiable, right? I'm a father, a husband first, and that's it. And so there can't be anything, and that's not just speaking outwardly to other people. That's what that's a conversation I have to have with myself, or have had to have with myself at times, and just to make sure that you have to check yourself every now and again. Okay, is this going to get in the way of, if I'm a husband and father first, making this decision, doing this thing, what does it do there? Does it make me better in that circumstance? Does it make me, does it make me worse? Sometimes it can be a net neutral proposition. But what it can't do is make me a worse one of those things. And so I think I can look at opportunities that way that might come my way. I look at business that way, is that it doesn't mean that there's not sacrifice. It doesn't mean that there's not long days. And there's sometimes where I wish I was, able to be home sooner, and I wasn't. And I had to work late, or I come home stressed, or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, for the long haul, I have to have the belief and conviction in whatever I'm doing is for the better of first them, my wife, and my children, and then everything else will take, it'll work itself out. And so far, so good. It's played out. But to talk about the partnership, you're right. Yeah, it's especially in home services, it's not uncommon. It's a really hot space now for private equity groups to come in, and other larger organizations, platform organizations that are sort of building. And so yeah, a few years back now, gosh, more than that. Joe and I were fielding emails and phone calls and mailings and everything else from so many different groups that were sort of knocking on the door and saying, "Hey, maybe we can partner together. Maybe we can, help you sort of on your exit, or whatever it may be." And so, over a course of some time, right, there was more and more curiosity that we had around learning what that might look like. But again, it goes back to culture. We knew what it couldn't look like. And it couldn't look like that if we were going to make a choice, if we were to partner with somebody that the fabric of what it meant to be at Exterior Medics, or meant to be an Exterior Medics team member, was ripped apart. And so, but we did look at it, and we decided, beyond legacy, for the life of the organization, to truly live beyond myself, beyond my partner Joe, and be bigger than us. That partnering seemed to make more and more sense, right? That we didn't want this. This wasn't a lifestyle business. It wasn't a legacy business. It wasn't a business that we were going to just have to, or desire to pass on to our children. Not that there's anything wrong with that if that's your business, but we wanted to be a business that transcended time and lived well beyond our years. And we felt like partnering with the right group would make that happen. And so we spoke to a lot of folks. We got really serious. Gosh, investment bankers, and business advisors, and
I
CPAs, and
remembered that, you opted to bet on yourself and go the route of work. and you built this business. And then when you were going through this process, it was better than an MBA. It
Yeah,
was
it was, yeah. So I didn't, yeah. So I joked, right? Because as we highlighted at the beginning of our conversation today, I dropped out of school, so I didn't have, I didn't have the same college debt that a lot of folks have, or these college tuition bills. But I certainly paid for it on the back end, right? That was my education. Like, I spent a lot of money with a lot of great people to ensure that we were putting ourselves and our company and our people in the best hands possible. That's what it really came down to. And so when we were looking, so what we knew that we wanted to look for in a partner, and the partner that we found in IHS Infinity Home Services was a partner that valued the same things that we did. And again, it's going to sound like a broken record here, but I promise you, it's the God's honest truth. It's all about culture, and that's why we made the decision we did. Is that, and there may be some people in the audience that believe that that doesn't exist once you talk about private equity money or partnering and selling your organization or being acquired or merging with a company. But it can and it does exist out there. There are certainly a lot of horror stories. There are a lot of folks that are out there for the wrong reasons, but there are some good people out there that are out there for the right reasons. And when we met with IHS, we met with the founder, Josh Sparks is his name, and he spoke to us in our first meeting about integrity, about hard work, about service, and about what it meant to build a enduring great company. And that was different. That was different than a lot of the other folks that we spoke to. So again, bigger than the paycheck that was was being promised to us for partnering with this company. It was more about, what are we going to do? What is it going to look like for the people? And also something that we wanted to maintain to be a part of, because there's a lot of there's a lot left in the tank here, right? I feel like there's a lot more to contribute. There's a lot more work to be done uh, by myself, on myself, and so I wanted to make sure that we were partnering with somebody that not only was good for us in the short term, but certainly for the long term in terms of our people, and able to continue on this journey, but just doing it at a greater capacity, having folks behind us that we're going to sort of just be able to sort of pour rocket fuel on this machine. And again, the good work that we're doing and we were doing at the time could just be done, tenfold.
So I love the trajectory. I can't wait to see where you guys go to, because to know that the right people have been doing the right things by other people to build a business, and it's a business in exteriors, right? I mean, there are businesses that, people try to market as sexy, but I find that the way in which you all treat your people, your customers, your families, yourselves, to be of the highest honor for everybody involved. So the one commonality, and we can close on this because the through line is culture. That's what we've learned today. And you have built a culture that is very impressive. And a lot of people are thinking, but I'm not in charge of a company, right? I didn't build a company, so I'm not in charge of the culture of my company. So let's bring it down to something that I think more people can understand, and you can help us with this. You can help me with this.
Yeah.
And if we were to take culture as a concept and we were to take that to the individual level, I now turn this into what I call defining what is your definition of success? Defining that for yourself, right? So you and Joe collectively defined what you wanted as your culture, which in essence is, this is a no go or this is a go for us because this is what we feel is winning. And never, and you and I have talked numbers, and never have we mentioned a number in this entire conversation, by the way. I just want people to notice that. Nobody has mentioned a number. But we have mentioned a feeling, and we have mentioned, what it takes in order to make sure that that exists, and identifying potential and investing in people. And by doing that, they more than exceeded numbers. I can promise the audience that Exterior Medics has more than exceeded numbers. That's why Mark and Joe were fielding all of these phone calls from all of these different companies, because they met the numbers, but they met the numbers because they knew their compass. They knew their North Star. They had their definition of success. They agreed upon it and they held to it. So what would you say to people who are struggling with their definition of success? How can you help them build that for themselves?
I think success it's a journey, not a destination, right? And I think that what we all should be doing every day is looking to just make ourselves and those around us just a little bit better, right? That might sound,
You said that at the
uh,
beginning.
yeah, it really is. But I believe it, and it's at the heart of when I wake up in the morning, I want to end the day a better version of myself. And I want you to be a better version of yourself. I want my family to be a better version of themselves. I want my company to be a little bit better today than they were yesterday. And again, because it is truly believing that it is not a destination, that I believe that I will always be on the journey, right? I will never arrive, is a feeling that I think that everybody should really take to heart. And because I think sometimes we're reaching for things and then we get there and then we're kind of like, is this it? But going back to even what you had mentioned earlier, right, as far as with me, that curiosity or that seeking to understand, it's because I always believe there's just something more, right? There's something more I could have been doing. I could have been a little bit better. And it's not about being dissatisfied or not thankful or grateful for the success that you have and the things that you've achieved, and you can be happy and you should be, and just really full of full of love and joy in life. I want all of this for everybody. It's like there's not, oh, there's more things. There's always more things that you can have. There's always more money that you can make. But it's like, no, I've made an impact, but I continue to make an impact. I can make a greater impact. Again, and there's nothing more rewarding if you take that opportunity, sort of when you pour into people to see them realize their potential and see that sort of carry forward, right? And that's like a big the big dream of mine is to make impacts in individuals today that will make impacts on individuals tomorrow that one day will make great seismic waves, right? That I will never know about, but they'll be out there and they'll be changing the world for a better place. And I don't think that's just so I don't think it's just a dream, right? I think it's a reality that we can live and yeah, just make it a little bit better.
I love that. Mark Watson with Exterior Medics. If anybody doesn't know, I talk often about quantum giving and what Mark just described as making these seismic waves of impact on people's potential that go beyond him. That is quantum giving at its best. And Mark's living it as a leader. I'm so grateful to have you as a friend, as a mentor, as a guest on today's show. Thank you for sharing a little bit about your journey and knowing that it's not the destination, that it continues to be the journey. I'm looking forward to staying on this journey with you, continuing our friendship, seeing where you go, seeing all the people that you impact. People, if you don't follow Mark Watson, follow him because he's definitely one to watch. I know that I'm just very fortunate. So Mark, thank you for taking the time today. I know people are going
Thanks
to
for
get
the
a
opportunity.
lot out of this.
I appreciate you so much, Tina. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Turn Talks. To learn more about our robust mentoring platform, visit us at turnmentoring.com. Join us next time for more enlightening conversations.